Hello everyone and welcome to the next installment of Fireside Cinema. This week I sat down with the delightful Amy Coop to talk about her film The Treehouse and a number of other projects that she's been working on. Let's take a little look at The Treehouse and I hope you enjoy the interview.
Hello? I saw the light. I thought you might need a friend. I saw all the people today too. Everyone looked so sad. I don't want to talk about it. Sorry. Do you believe in heaven? I think heaven is like flying. Like you could just fly away into the sky. On an adventure. Perfect adventure. You can always come back to the treehouse. Will you be here? I'll try.
Amy, thank you very much for coming in today and interviewing with us. Let's talk a bit about Treehouse, which is your project that you did with Creative England. Can you tell us a bit about that and also a bit about the iShorts?
Yeah, the Treehouse was selected for iShorts 2014. It was the first iteration of the new kind of funding strand. And as a result, it was quite new for the Creative England guys. It was obviously very new for the filmmakers going through the process. And as with any of the kind of funding rounds, if you don't put anything in, you're not getting funded. So everybody rushes. Oh my God, I need to find a project. And the application process for iShorts then, I'm sure it's probably fairly similar now, was you had to put in pitch three projects, basically. You didn't have to send in a script. It was essentially kind of 3 outlines for stuff that you would like to make, and with your other supporting material and stuff. And then if you were lucky enough to get through to the second round, which is a sit-down kind of interview, you then talk through those 3 different ideas and really kind of choose a favourite, basically. So when I originally applied, I put in 3 ideas, none of which were the Treehouse. They were 3 completely different things. Not even vaguely similar, in fact. One of them was kids-based, so it had a similarity, because a lot of my work is kids-based. But so I put in 3 ideas and got through the first round of selection. So kind of got through that cull and got to the meeting, and then went in and met the very lovely development and production people from Creative England, who kind of said, great, we really love your ideas, can you tell us a bit more about them? And if you had to pick a favourite, which one of these would you really like to make under this scheme? And I kind of said, to be honest, none of them. Which at that point I was half expecting them to go, well, you can just go.
They're about to give you the check.
Exactly, yeah, you can just leave. But fortunately, they didn't. And they said, okay, so what do you want to do? What is the kind of project? Have you got a project? And I was like, yeah, I do. I've got this idea, this project I've been working on, that I've been developing, called The Treehouse. And they went, oh, brilliant, can you just pitch that for us? And so I pitched it. And it was called The Treehouse, but it's a completely different film to the one we made. I mean, completely different. The only similarities are the name and the fact it's got a treehouse in it.
Can I ask you about the writing process? Because this is something that's really front of mind for me as a writer and also for our audience, and going through that process. So did you start with, I want to explore what it's like for a young person to deal with a funeral?
It's a really good question. All of my work tends to be personal in some respect. I've never been able to kind of think, here's a gap that I think would be a really good kind of, let's make a film about this. I've never really been able to do that. So I always look for some kind of personal connection. And my previous films are very kind of personal and slightly autobiographical in some way. So there's always an element of me in there. And one of the things which I've always had a hang-up about is death, in terms of just all kinds of different things, in terms of the kind of questions around it and what it does to people, what it does to families, and its kind of societal impact as opposed to just the sheer fact of somebody dying. And so that's something which I'd kind of been toying with for a while. And because most of my stuff is kid-based, a lot of my work is kind of young people and teenagers, I just kind of started thinking about it in those terms, as in, okay, what is it like? What is it really like to actually go through, a death in the family if you are 10, 11, 12? Because I've been really fortunate in that, I've got to my age and I still have both my parents. So I've never really had to deal with that really firsthand. Okay. And so it kind of those are the kind of questions, really.
What was a real turning point for you in terms of, sort of getting into the industry and being able to get more contacts and being able to make more projects?
Firstly, I started in the industry as a runner in 1999. And one of the great things about being a runner is you're in the middle of everything. You work with everybody, you get to know everybody, you get to see what they do, you get to learn from them. So it was a really, really good place to be. So I did that and I worked my way up through the assistant director kind of route. And then I'd always known that I wanted to make my own films. I'd made one kind of short prior to doing anything else in the industry, just after I kind of finished college. And so I always wanted to kind of go into the industry, but specifically directing. And then you are faced with a kind of dilemma. There's lots of people who want to be a director, but when I started in, as I say, the kind of late 90s, early 2000s, the technology that we have today just didn't really exist. If you wanted to do something which was quote unquote cinematic, you had to shoot on film. HD as it exists today wasn't really an option. The cameras that people were using were still 2/3 inch cameras, which looked very video-y, very frustrating to kind of use. So if you were going to make a film, you had to get some support, you had to do an awful lot of begging, borrowing and stealing. And the best way I found to do that was build relationships. So as a runner, you start getting to know people, you get to know Grips and Sparks and costume people and whatever else. And then when you come to doing a production, you just, you're finishing 3 months on some drama and you say to people, I'm trying to get this short off the ground. We're shooting for 2 days. Is there any chance you can come and help us out?
Women in film.
Yeah.
I know you're outspoken about it. I wanted to touch on it briefly. 2016, are we doing enough? Where are we with this? We're not.
No, definitely not. I think, unfortunately, the film industry has always been a very male-oriented industry, particularly certain elements of it. People will always point to the fact there's a lot of female producers, which there are. There's a relatively decent amount-ish of female writers, but all of these kind of disciplines are still very male-dominated. And when it comes to directing, it's ridiculous. It's a whitewash, especially when you end up talking about drama and features. The amount of women who get to direct a single film is tiny, and the amount who then go on to direct a second one is negligible, for no good reason. And a lot of people have kind of discussed the whys and wherefores of it, and how male directors are allowed to fail and allowed to kind of develop their career. But as a female filmmaker, if you don't hit the ground running, you're definitely screwed. And even if you do, it can take, a decade to get your second film away.
There's certainly a push to get more female directors, actors, writers, but I don't know what you feel is something that needs to be done in the short term.
I genuinely don't know what the answer is, but I think a part of it is a realization that women have stories to tell, and have the skills and the creativity and the work ethic and everything that you need to be a filmmaker, to be a director. There is no truth to the idea that somehow women aren't as good at making films or aren't as good at telling stories or can only tell women's stories, which is just nonsensical. But that has been the prevailing opinion in certain areas of the industry, and it's nonsense. And unfortunately, that attitude still prevails in certain areas, and so it's just very, very difficult for women to get that first break and to be able to prove themselves. And even when they do, they still find that they're being undermined, basically.
What's next for you?
There's a few things I would like to do. There's a couple of shorts which I would like to do. Shorts is one of those things where at some point you have to stop making short films. But as a form, I really enjoy short films as a kind of as a challenge of storytelling and filmmaking. So there's a couple of things I would like to do. I don't genuinely think they're going to make any huge difference to my career trajectory, but I think they would be fun, interesting, different, a challenge to kind of to do something slightly different in terms of the style of stuff I've done before, to kind of open me up a bit as a director, I suppose. Because a lot of the stuff I do has been kid-based, kind of child-centric. That's one of the kind of areas I'm focusing on. So recently I had a meeting with CBBC up in Manchester about stuff they've got coming up. And they have a very specific kind of process for bringing people in as a director. And so we're just at the beginning of that process now, so hopefully that might come to something.
What advice would you give to young filmmakers, aspiring artists out there that want to make a project, want to start working in film, eventually want to springboard into the industry?
I think the key thing now is there is very, very little holding you back from making films. The technology that's available now is streets ahead of what it was even 5 years ago, never mind when I started. So do it, just literally, there are an awful lot of people who talk about making films, and they talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and never actually do it. And there are all kinds of reasons for that. I think people don't want to fail. So if you make a film, you are opening yourself up to criticism, you're opening yourself up to failure, but you're also opening yourself up to a whole bunch of other stuff, a whole bunch of learning opportunities, a whole bunch of amazing experiences. And if you don't do it, you won't have those experiences. So even if it's making stuff on your phone, I work with kids. When I'm not making films, I teach filmmaking to kids. And it's amazing the stuff that they come up with. And they'll be shooting it on their phones, they'll be shooting it on DSLRs, they'll be shooting on anything they can get hold of. And the image quality now is such that it holds up. You can shoot on a phone and then put it on a cinema screen, and it won't look terrible. But then it all comes down to story. And the best way of getting better at telling stories is doing it. The more you tell stories, the more you write. If you write one script, chances are your second script will be better and your third script will be better than that, because you learn every time. So it really is kind of a case of just, get together with a few people, some like-minded friends, spend a weekend, do something.
With your iPhone.
Yeah, shoot it on your iPhone, borrow a DSLR.
Streets,
you don't need huge amounts of stuff. You don't need permission to make a film. There's no kind of god of filmmaking that says, yes, you're allowed to make a film now. That's nonsense. So, just do it. And you never know. One of the films that I made was a thing called Boy Soldiers, which was written by the cast. I kind of helped them, but largely by them. And they were all 11 at the time. We shot it in an afternoon. We spent 40 quid on costumes on eBay, which it's set in World War I. They're like, Home Guard eBay fancy dress things. They're ridiculous. They're holding toy guns with the little red caps on the end. We shot it in an afternoon, and I shot it on a 5D with a friend of mine with a boom. Cut it on the Sunday. We shot it on a Saturday, cut it on the Sunday, and so it was finished within about 3 days. That film went on to film festivals all over the world and won kind of best film at the Limelight Film Awards. It's not perfect. It's literally, we did it in a weekend for no money. It had good writing, a good basic story, good writing. Everything else was good enough. It's not technically brilliant. It's not amazingly shot, but it doesn't matter. It had a great story, and we got good, solid performances from the kids. And, it took a weekend. So a lot of people, when they set out to make a film, they want to do the big all singing, all dancing, cranes and steady cams and drones and everything else. Fine, if you can, great, knock yourself out. But those are tools to tell your story. So it doesn't matter what tools you've got, you need the story. The story has to come first. And then hopefully the story will attract the people, the help, the funding, the toys, the whole bit.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for coming in. Some really good advice.
No, pleasure.
Thank you.